works. Okay, so no one will know what I said about 33. All right, so this is actually like, yeah, this is what we want actually. So document.getElement by ID we saw, and then yeah, you can essentially like notice here's this dot thing happening again. So like document. Oh, and maybe I don't know. You might be kind of curious about this because typically you'll like assign the result of something like this to a variable and then use the variable name dot inner HTML. But the variable is just a reference to the thing that the variable is holding. And so like this may look weird to you, but remember when we were dealing with strings last week and we did replace? So we typically do that on a variable, but you can do it directly on the string. And that's technically what you're doing. So like right now, you can do dot replace. And I don't know, maybe we're going to expand. So we do, you know, Texas. So like, I don't know, maybe this looks kind of odd to you, but that's technically what's happening. Like you're always doing it on the type directly, and variables are always just references to that primitive type. So that's what they're doing here. They're doing document.getElement by ID, and then in your mind you think like, okay, what's like that going to turn into? What's the type of like what this particular piece of the code is going to turn into? Well, the type is actually in this case a special type called element, because you're getting element by ID, and so you get this like special object called element that has a bunch of different properties and methods on it. And so one of those properties is inner HTML. And then you give it the new HTML. Now this is then just writing something. That's not an actual thing. And so that's not very good. You might be like, what the hell is new HTML? You know? Because it kind of looks like code. And in fact, new is a word that you use in code. So, but anyways, this is correct. And then the example down here should maybe be a little bit more helpful. Yeah, so here's what would actually work, which is you give it a string, but the string is going to be interpreted as HTML. So if you use like a p tag or you use like a div, it would basically be like you wrote that in the HTML. It's going to be interpreted as a div or a p tag. And so you can see maybe they did that in another example. It doesn't look like it. Okay, but that's what we needed. And the HTML that we want inside this button is just this. Like we just want this, but spelled correctly. So we just want it to say click me. So in this case, we're not going to do a p tag or anything. We're just going to do text, and that's it, because that's all we need inside the button. So yeah, I will do my button dot inner HTML, and we're like assigning to this property. So we're like modifying the property. That's what like, so this equals is what we use for assignment. You can assign to a variable. You can also assign to a property, like it's a variable. So click me. And see. We did it right, and we did. So now we're seeing it spelled correctly. And that's our JavaScript changing the HTML page. So yeah, we can, that's what's cool about JavaScript is you can like attach to the page and listen to things happening on the page, but you can also change the page. And often what you're doing is you're sort of doing both. You're like, often the way modern websites are done is they find out who you are and they load a bunch of data on you. And then they load like a template on the website, and then the JavaScript injects all of your custom information into the website. So like it loads, and then your information is like customizes the look of the website. So JavaScript often is change the HTML in some way, then listen and attach to the website for click events or for user input. And then whenever those things happen, change the page again. So it's kind of this like, you know, change the page and then respond to things happening on the page, and then change the page and respond to things happening on the page. So you've seen kind of both of those. You've seen in this one example, we're changing the page and we're also like, actually, we're not listening to anything, but we're like getting something that's on the page. So there's ways to like query the page and there's ways to update the page.
Rather than just changing the text on this, would you change it from like button to H1?
Yeah, you would probably delete the button and then add an element. So like I actually linked on this additional resources, or actually in this challenge project that I'm going to show you guys. For all you easy people, I've got a challenge for you. No, it's great. It's great. I was shocked that so many people said that because usually this is the module where people start to kind of like tell me to slow down, and so that's really promising that you guys are doing well so far. Yeah, so there's a resource on this challenge that's an MDN. There's a lot of good stuff on this MDN site now. There's a bunch of really good tutorials. And so here's a tutorial on just manipulating documents with JavaScript. And on here, if you just go through this, you'll see an example of what you asked about, which is you can yeah, you can see this, there's this create element. So this is going to make a p tag. And then you can like, so I don't think it's actually, it's when you do this, it's not actually on the page yet, I don't think. It's only in the page whenever you add it to a particular piece of the HTML. So I think that's what's happening here is they're appending this, so para is what they call this variable. And then you can see they're appending a new child to a thing called section, and they're adding a paragraph to it. And then I think there's, so you would probably like append it to something, in your case, like the whatever different type of element you want. And then you can also, you can see you can remove a child. So you'd probably remove the button by ID and then add a paragraph. But yeah, you can take like a list, or you can take, yeah, let's just say a list. So you can take a list and then you can append list elements into the list. That's like what you would often use this for, because you're making a to-do list app. You don't have everybody's to-dos. You query for everybody's to-dos, and then you need to like add all the to-dos to the page. So often you'll have like the structure, like here's the list, and then here's the template of what a to-do should look like. Then you get the data, and then you like add it to the page in like loop and add as many list elements as you need based on how much data you have. Any other questions?
Yeah. It's not working. Getting the error, it says document.get element ID is not functioning.
Yes, you probably spelled it wrong. Will you send me the code? Will you post your code in Slack?
Okay.
And then this will be helpful for other people to see. When you're posting code, by the way, you can, like if I was going to post this code here, so you can do triple backtick in Slack, and then it gives you this format, and then you can paste. And typically that's like an easier way to read the code, like it'll format it nicely. So you can try that.
Check in.
Yeah, so you have a capital D instead of a lowercase d. So that's when, so you should not have typed all that out. You're not lazy enough. Like hit tab the minute that you see it, because like then you're not going to spell it wrong. And also, if it's not showing up in the tab complete, it's almost always because you're spelling it wrong. So like that should be a sign right away. Like using the tab complete is like a way to like make sure you don't do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, and also like it's, yeah, you're not used to like spaces or case and stuff mattering, but like it does. It's, yeah, yeah. So you get used to seeing that pretty quickly. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah. Cool.
All right, let me close this. All right, so the prep work for today was arrays.
How'd that go? Pretty good?
Why do you think we would need an array? Like what's the use of an array?
Good for,
People like data,
you know, all your data. I mean, like,
can you
you could,
cycle through it?
so like, I mean, you could just make a bunch of variables though, right? And instead of using an array.
I mean, you can't. Yeah, that's so leading. Like when you don't know about an array and you have a bunch of data, you would just think like, okay, well, I'll have like list item 1 variable, list item 2 variable, list item 3 variable, and like just like why not just use a bunch of variables? But that becomes really problematic, and you also like you can't, like you mentioned, you can't like loop through a bunch of variable names. You can only reference them directly in the code. And so, yeah, an array is a way to represent one thing that has multiple elements. And so what I mean by thing is like you think of a shopping cart as one thing, but the shopping cart has potentially, unlimited number of items in it. And an array can also have as many items as you want, as long as it fits in memory. But you'll never run into it. Like it's like 200,000 something. Actually, it's probably higher than that at this point. But like, so there's like a technical limitation of how much you can put in an array. But theoretically, or like in practice for you, you won't ever run into it. So an array is like, can hold as much data as you have, but it's like grouping it as one thing. And that's really helpful. Okay, did you guys, so curriculum went well, seems like it made sense. So let's just go through it real quick. So yeah, I'll go ahead and just do all this in a JS file today instead of the HTML file. So you can start getting used to that. How do I make an empty array?
Brackets.
Yeah, 2 brackets. So this is an empty array, totally fine. It can be empty. How would I log to the console how many elements are in my array? Yeah, so like with strings, we sell the dot length property. Often anything that can have like more than one element, we'll typically use that property. So test array dot length. So yeah, let's just make sure it's just all one, make sure it's all happening. Yeah, so 0 is correct. So that, yeah, there are no elements in it. If I want to put elements in here when I'm making it, how do I do that? Like if I want to have the numbers 0 through 4 in here, what does it look like? What do I type?
0, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, very good. And you actually don't need the space, but most people put the space. Okay. we should see. Oh, so yeah, I just log, so notice like you can just log the array. Like I was gonna do length, but I just passed the whole array, which is fine. Like just like I passed the whole button, you can pass the whole array and it'll log it in a nice way for you. And like sometimes if it's really complicated, it'll let you like break it out. So this is sort of saying like, hey, the 0th index, there's 0, the 1th index, there's 1, so on. And then you can see length is actually listed here as a property. Okay, but I can do dot length and we should expect to see we're good. Okay, if I want to console log the first element in here, what do I type? Yeah.
0.
What'd you say?
The array brought you 0.
Yeah, so array with stuff. And then sort of almost like it looks like when you're making array, but it's accessing a property like we saw with the string as well. So we're gonna access the 0th index. So this should show 0 again. Now, an array is in JavaScript is very dynamic. So typically, if you're trying to be tidy and you don't like things messy, like an array is going to look like something that, like what is common about all these elements?
Your numbers.
They're all numbers, yeah. So typically you're going to see, if you're making an array, it's typically going to be the same type. So like it's an array of numbers, or what's another type of array we can have?
Strings.
An array of strings, an array of booleans. So typically that's what you'll see, but there's nothing about JavaScript that requires you to do that. So like I can do, 0. So like, I can do 0, true, false in a string, whatever I want, whatever I'm feeling. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there may be like a use case for it where you would want different types in there, but you typically, it's not super common. It doesn't make a ton of sense in most cases to have what's called a heterogeneous array, one that has different types in it, versus homogeneous, which is all the same type. Okay, but no matter what the type is, it's all the same operations. It's all like if you have an array of strings versus an array of numbers, like you still access it the same way, you still use the same length property and everything like that. Okay, so the tutorial showed you a few different methods on an array. So just like when we were dealing with strings, we saw, hey, there's like a length property, but then there's also all these like cool functions / methods that are available to me on it for stuff that I might want to do with the array. So like almost everything you are ever going to want to do is available. It's like literally every program that uses JavaScript only picks from that assortment of methods and can make like every possible program. Like it's like you just learn those methods and like you'll be shocked at how many different ways you can use them and how often they fulfill the needs of whatever business case you have. So there's a bunch of methods on an array that like do, all these things you can possibly imagine. And so do you guys remember how to find that documentation? If you wanted to find the methods that are available to you on an array, how would you do it? What would you search?
JS array methods,
JS what?
array methods.
That should work. Good. So this is what you want. You want, if you're looking up like a method on a built-in JavaScript thing, then MDN is usually a good sign. So this is like the main root article about arrays in JavaScript. And so you can read this article, but also like on the left, they're going to have that same thing, which is like, here's all the different stuff on it. And just sort of, I think there was a post in Slack about prototype and everything. Honestly, let's just like ignore that. I honestly wish they didn't do this because you don't type it that way in the code. You type it as whatever your array is, like in the variable or as a literal array dot copy with it. You never type prototype. So I don't know why they do that. It's technically correct. But anyways, like you, every time we've done it, it's been array dot length, array dot without prototype on it. So just ignore that for now. But yeah, we have length, we've already seen that. And then, yeah, there's all these cool methods on here. Does any of these look cool to anybody? Join is pretty cool. Which of these were in the curriculum? Yeah, good, okay. So yeah, the methods you guys introduced to are an interesting type of method. So yeah, let's look at pop real quick. So the pop method removes the last element from an array and returns that element. This method changes the length of the array. So that is a big deal to know if the method you're calling is changing the array that you called it on. And usually that's like kind of a no-no nowadays. So most preferred methods do not mutate the thing that is like being, that you're calling it on. It typically, what you typically want is for it to return a new thing and like leave your previous thing unchanged. And like, notice like, even if, we talked about like you can't change a constant. Like you can't change what's referenced to the constant, but if you call, like if we take an array and we assign it to a constant and then call pop on that, that array is changed. The constant is still pointing to that array, but the array itself can change. And so programs, like if stuff is like mutating and on like one line something is something and then on another line it's a different thing, it can make the program kind of harder to understand. And so often you won't want to mutate something. Now there's use cases where it makes total sense to do it. Like if you have a person's shopping cart, you often want to mutate the shopping cart directly and like remove an element from the shopping cart. But typically you want to reduce the times you mutate stuff directly and prefer stuff that doesn't. But anyways, so just keep that in mind when you're reading the documentation. You want to keep an eye out for like, does this change it or does it give me something new and I have to do something with that new thing? Yeah, so pop. So if we have typical shopping cart for me, and if my wife's like can't get beer this time, we would do my shopping cart dot what? Dot pop. Now, this only is correct because we know that that's the last element, and we know from reading the documentation that it removes the last element. And then also, like, if I want to know what was removed, what can I do here? When we're reading this method, it does another thing. So if I want like a reference to what was removed, what can I do on line 20?
So equal to the variable.
Yeah, so the method mutates and it returns something. It's like doing two things. And so since the method returns something, then I can assign that to a variable as mentioned. So we can do, const last item. Sorry, we can also log the shopping cart again. Well, actually, I haven't logged it yet, but I'll do it here. So we'll see, the full shopping cart, then we'll see the item removed, then we'll see the new modified shopping cart. Full, removed, modified. And then it's just like, actually, never mind, you can get, I want beer too. So we can do my shopping cart dot what? If I want to mutate and add an element to the array, what's the method for that? Push, yeah, push. You push your shopping carts. So yeah, we can add that back and then console log shopping cart again. And it's fine. Cool, yeah, so pop and push are both mutating methods. But most of the other ones aren't. Like for example, dot join, for example, it creates and returns a new string by concatenating all the elements in the array. And so like when we call elements in this example here, when they call elements.join, it's not modifying elements. So if you like console log elements here, call .join, and then console log it again, it'll be the same. So this method is like if you have an array of stuff, for some reason you need to turn it into a string, like maybe displaying to the user or something like that, like an error message or I can't think of whatever these days as well, but there's plenty. So you can do this join method, and then you can give it what you want it to separate it by. So typically, well, not typically, but you may use comma, and so that's what they use by default. So I can do console log my shopping cart. Now, remember when I've logged this before directly, it kind of looks like this, like it's a special looking log where it's like, yes, like it's not just text, you can like, there's like colors and then I can like click on it and stuff. So this is what it looks like as an array when it's logged. But if I do this dot join and then tell it to use comma as the separator, which is what it does by default, if you don't tell it, then you'll see it's logging as a string here. It's not this like special version where I can like click on it and stuff. And also like that's the only separator. So typically you'll do like a space as well, comma space, if you wanted it to look good, or it can be whatever separator you want. Like doesn't matter. Okay. So yeah, anytime you're doing something, there's probably a method that'll help you do it. So just to give you like a taste, some of the really useful methods that I use quite a bit, there might be like filter, for example. So yeah, they're giving me good examples. I don't have to think of one. An array of words, and you want to find all the words that are longer than 3 characters. And so this method, now this is a special syntax for a function that we'll learn about later. So this shouldn't make any sense. And you also haven't learned about comparisons. So this shouldn't make any sense either. But like at least the intent should make sense. Like you can almost sort of read this, which is, hey, filter the words to where the word length is greater than 6. That's what this is saying. And so this doesn't mutate the array. The words stay the same. So I still have the original array with all the words in it, but it gives me back a new array that I assign to a variable. And then I can log that variable and see, hey, here's my new array with the words, in this case, greater than 6. And then you can say like, well, like how many of them were greater than 6? Well, you could say, okay, what's the length of the new array divided by the length of the original array to get the percent that were greater than 6. So that's, yeah, we'll get to like these kind of cool use cases that start to make sense. All right, but yeah, if you need to find array methods, then you just can go to the documentation and check out all the methods that are available here. So that's something I often do, like in my job. Like I'll be like thinking about what I need to do, and then it's like, okay, I need to like filter, and then I need to filter again, and then like join. It's just you're just like your use case. It will just be like calling a bunch of these methods to create whatever you need to create. And so I don't have all these memorized, so I always look them up on the documentation. Okay. Just check the curriculum. I'm not going to go over the multi-dimensional array thing or like nesting arrays. It's just a good brain exercise, but you don't do it very often unless you're modeling something complex, like a tic-tac-toe grid or something like that, or a chessboard. Okay, any questions? Okay. All right, so we'll start doing an exercise with the time we got left, and we'll go maybe 15 minutes over. Let's see how far we get. All right, so what I want to do is make an e-commerce page with a shopping cart. And then, so I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to do a very basic example of this. But for a challenge project for you guys, if you want to try it out, let me talk about what that's going to be. So you're going to make a page that is an online garage sale for you. And so pick 6 items you want to sell, not literally, just like for fun. And then you'll then, and you can make this as pretty as you want. So if you want to keep practicing your HTML, CSS skills, like this is a great chance to do that. But yeah, have it look however you want, where you're displaying those 6 items. So you can imagine, yeah, I shot that with Mary, so whatever. So go, like typically the way they display things on like a e-commerce site is, okay. So typically the way that they'll display things is like this style, where like often the way it's displayed is with what's called a card, often is what people call this. And so this whole thing is the card, which is, and you notice every single one's the same. So that's what I meant by like, you're going to have like a template for how something should look, and then you get data from the back end that will then fill in the template. So the template is the card, which is there's an image, there's then the brand, there's then the name of the item, and then there's the price. and it's just injected with different information. And so this is a list, right, that I can like scroll through of different shorts. But it's all the same information. And so for your garage sale, you almost want the same thing. You want an image of the thing you're selling, probably the name of it, potentially the description of it. My name is 6, whatever, and then how much you want to sell it for. So those are like the different properties you'll want on your template. And then you just need to decide how you want to display those things. So you may want to do, like, this is a I don't know how many shorts are in here, but it's like one row grid, and then they're like only displaying 4 at a time. But you might do like a 3x3 grid or whatever you want it to look like for your 6 items. And then you're going to add buttons. So on this, the button is this is pretty complex actually. If you look like I can like add a specific size and stuff like that. There's some dynamic things happening here. But for you, you can just have a static button that's always there if you want to just make it easier. So imagine there's like a button down here, and that button should just say add to cart. And then you'll click that button and it should add that item to your cart. For now, it should just be like just an array of strings potentially for your cart, which is the name of the item. And then you'll want to provide a button that says like checkout. And then when you hit checkout, it will show you your cart and the total price. In some way. Like, so you can just have it show up or however you want to display it. So that's the like challenge for you guys to try to do. And then I've got some resources that should help with it. And then, yeah, if you want to submit it, we'll do like a little competition, and I'm working on a prize for the winner. So you all are winners if you do it. But I'll pick whoever I think gave the most effort and like also got it to work. And I also will give feedback to anybody that submits it. So yeah, just have that done if you're gonna do it by next Saturday. And I'll go ahead and start kind of doing a more simple version of it for the exercise today. So I just made a new file for the exercise, and then I'll do everything in here, including the script tag. So HTML, title. The script. All right, so I'm never gonna make it that looks very good because I just can't do it anymore. But the template, you can like often if you're gonna like group stuff together, you'll do it. I mean, there's more specific things, but div is sort of this like just generic that people often use. So I'm just kind of creating a little section here, and this would sort of be the card that for the item. And so we can do like an H3 or an H4 or something, and this would be like the name of the item. So we can say, teddy bear. And so that's the name, and then we can have, I'm not going to do an image quite yet, but do paragraph for the description. Pass down. For generations. And then we want to do price. And for that, we might do like, yeah, I guess. An E tag, or maybe. Just see what this looks like. It has to work. They're not looking great, but that's not what we're trying to learn right now. And then we might add a button. Add to cart. Okay. So this, I'm sort of making the template, right? And so, I mean, it's not gonna look great, but if we duplicate it and did. Okay, so since I'm doing divs and I'm not doing any CSS or anything like that, it's just doing a full new line, which you probably want it to be a grid potentially, but I'll leave that up to you people that know how to do CSS and stuff, so. I'd have to look up a ton of stuff. I don't do very much front end stuff anymore. So it's been a hot minute. I certainly could do it if I tried, okay? All right, so these buttons, they're not hooked up to anything. And so we'll provide IDs for these and this is where there's going to be a ton of different ways to do this thing. And the way, like, since we're using plain JavaScript and we haven't learned enough quite yet to kind of store the information in one place, like this will be kind of weird the way we do this. But it's how we're gonna do it with the tools that we currently have. But what I mean by that is like the item is called like teddy bear coffee pot, and that's in the HTML, but we're sort of gonna have to duplicate that in the JavaScript. So it's usually not good if you're duplicating information. You typically want to store it in one place as like a source of truth. But that's okay for now. So we're gonna give this button an ID. And this would be like coffee pot and then this one would be teddy bear and like add to cart. Okay, and then in my script, I'll do, const teddy bear button equals document dot get element by ID. Teddy. And then this would be coffee pot button. And then does anybody remember what I do to add something that'll respond when someone clicks on it?
Add event listener.
So, teddy bear button dot add event listener. What do I put here?
Click.
And the click, this is a string, yeah. And then again, this kind of hand wavy here because we haven't learned about functions yet, but this is where we pass a function. And this is just like a function is just code that is grouped together that can be ran at sort of like any moment by something that wants to run it. So we're like gonna like make a little grouping of code and then say, hey, run this code when they click. And so I'm just passing it the code I want it to run when someone clicks. And there's like multiple ways to make a function and pass it actually. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make the function, and you haven't learned this yet, but this would be teddy bear click. And then I'm just gonna console log right now, clicked bear. And then so I made a function and it's just, hey, here's like a grouping of code, which is just one line of code. And like name that grouping of code teddy bear click. And then, so it's sort of like a variable, sort of like saying, make a thing called teddy bear click. But that the contents of that thing are this code here. And so I can then like pass that thing to this function by name, teddy bear click like this. And notice I'm just passing the name. I'm not doing anything with any parentheses or anything like that. I'm just, here's the name of the function. So we'll get to functions. Oh, this for your homework, you learn about functions. That's where we are. But even if you don't understand the syntax quite yet, hopefully the intent makes sense. On the button, the teddy bear button, listen for when someone clicks, and when someone clicks, run the code teddy bear click. The code teddy bear click is just this console. So it's the stuff contained within these curly braces. So let's just check and see if it's working. So so I clicked add to cart for the teddy bear and I got clicked bear. And then if I click add to cart for coffee pot, I get nothing because we haven't hooked that one up. All right, so this is another thing that's kind of unideal, or not ideal. We're gonna like duplicate this for the other card. So like almost the same code is just gonna get duplicated. So instead of teddy bear click, this would be coffee pot click, and this would be clicked coffee pot. And then it's not teddy bear button add event listener, it's coffee pot button dot add event listener. And instead of teddy bear click, it's coffee pot click. And notice if you're editing the code that way, it's not going to give you like, so when I like before I had teddy bear click like this, and I want to change this to coffee pot click. If I just if I like delete the first few characters and start typing at the front, it does not know what I want because it's like I don't see anything called code click anywhere. So if you want to get the tab completion, you have to like do it from the end. Like you only get it when you're typing with nothing behind it, if that makes sense. Like, so it works right now because I've typed COFF and there's nothing after it. And so it's like, well, there's stuff that, there's stuff that starts with that I know about. But if I had like click at the end of this, oh, it's being smart right now, but it wasn't doing that before. So just if you're not seeing tab completion, just be careful, not misspell stuff. Okay. So we want copy pot click, and I'm actually, so I work in a different language right now, and so you notice I capitalize this function. You don't do that typically in JavaScript. So different languages have different styles for whatever reason. So you just kind of need to, like, what's the style of the language I'm running, and just kind of following it. So now we should be getting copy pot click and teddy bear click. And now we want to represent their shopping cart in some way. And we're going to make, the way that you think about this is like the state of this application, like there's a state to the application, which is the contents of the shopping cart, and it can change over time. And the state of the application is going to dictate the way the page looks. So if they have something in the cart, then one of the buttons is going to be different because it's in the cart, and clicking, you can't add it to the cart twice. And if it's in the cart, clicking the button should remove it from the cart. So the shopping cart is often, or like the state of your application is like the information that can change over the use of the application. So you often hear people say, what's the state? Or like, is there state in the application? And that just means like, is there information that's relevant that changes over time? And so for us, the shopping cart is the main state, and state is often like a global variable that can be used sort of anywhere. And so we're going to make at the top of our page, of our script, top of our script, we're going to make the shopping cart kind of variable that we're going to use to update and change the state of the application. So that is, you can still use a constant for that. And so that would be const shopping cart. And it starts off as an empty array. But remember, like we can mutate the array. So we're not going to change the array that is assigned to shopping cart, but we're going to change the size and the elements within that shopping cart array. So it starts off as empty. And then you'll learn more about scope in the homework lessons. So you'll learn about scope when you start doing functions. But we have this shopping cart up here in the global scope, meaning just like the top level scope of the script. By the way, like teddy bear button, copy pot button, those are both global scope variables as well, just because they're defined at the top level of our script. But there's these functions that run when we click, and this is technically a local scope inside here, but we can still reference the global scope. And so within these functions, when they click, we're going to do things to the shopping cart array. Which method do we learn about today that we might use in this case? Set it. Why are you so shy? Heard it.
Push,
Yeah, so push. So push is the method that modifies the array. It doesn't return anything new, it modifies it. And adds whatever you want to the array. So when we click teddy bear, we want to add something to the array that represents that we have that in our shopping cart. So, there's a, like, we gotta just, it's up to us to decide how we want to do that. Like, there's no answer of like the correct way to model this. It's like, however you want to do it, that you think is going to lead you to the path of getting it working the fastest. But like, you know, what should we put in the array to represent that they put teddy bear or coffee pot in their shopping cart? Like, what's something we can do? We can add the ID. Or we can add the name if we wanted to, like we can add just teddy bear and coffee pot. But it's up to us how we want to do it. I think the ID is not a bad idea. Because then we could use that ID to change the button. Because we're gonna need to get this button by ID and change the inner HTML of it to not be added to cart, but to be removed. And then whenever we're running this function of them clicking on it, we need to see, is that already in the cart? And if so, then move it. Oh, we haven't learned what we need to be able to do that yet. It's called an if statement. So we're not gonna be able to do the remove thing. That's okay. Okay. But yeah, that's all we need to do now. So we have shopping cart and we just need to, whenever they click teddy bear click, we would do shopping cart dot push. And then whatever we want to put here. So this is the teddy bear that they're clicking on. So we would do teddy bear. Yeah. And then if they click on coffee pot, we would do the same thing. And then let's add a checkout button. And do the same thing, we get that by ID. So checkout button, document.get element by ID. Checkout. And then duplicate this sort of thing again. Which would be checkout, click, and change this to be checkout button. Checkout, click. Let's log checkout, clicked. And we're not gonna do anything with shopping cart. We're going to, for now, let's just log shopping cart. Log within it. We could also log the price. This is how we're gonna do this with the tools you currently have, but there's like a method we could use. Well, actually, I can go ahead and show you that method. We want to just, oh, actually, we don't have the price information. Price information's up here. So we would need, so maybe we should add the price to the shopping cart for now instead of the ID. Just to get our example working. So yeah, instead of shopping cart push, teddy bear add, we're gonna add the 42 for the price of the bear, and then 63 for the price of the coffee pot. But then we comes along shopping cart. Let's see. So this is where we would use another type of thing called an object that lets you, like we could have in our shopping cart, we can have not just like strings or numbers or booleans, you can have this like more complex object, and it could be like the name of the item and the price of the item sort of grouped together in the shopping cart. Well, we haven't learned about that, so we did see in the curriculum having nested arrays though. So we can get a little funky here. And whenever you add an item, we can add an array. And we can just say, hey, for the 0 index, that'll be the price. And then for the 1th index, that'll be the ID. So this would be, I mean, yeah, we could do the ID clicked. Teddy bear add. And then we could even, if we wanted to, like add another slot for just the name. So we're getting a little more complex about, so like the 0th index of the shopping cart will be an item, and the 1th index of the shopping cart will be an item, but then that item would then be an array of the price, the name, or the price, the ID, and the name. So this is that multi-dimensional array thing that you saw. So we do that here as well. So price, ID, and name. And then, yeah, we'll log that. So let's just start with that. Let's just see how we're doing with that. So checkout logs that it was clicked, and then logs an empty array because we haven't added anything. We add the teddy bear, and then checkout. So this is what you're seeing here is there's an array, one array, but then that for the first element in that one array is another array. And so you can see the 0th index of the first array has this array, which is an array of 3, price, ID, name. And then if we added the teddy bear, we can add the coffee pot and then check out again and see, okay, now we've got an array of 2. It's 2 elements, but each element is an array with those 3 properties. So if I want to get the price of my full shopping cart, that's hard to do without looping or with a special method. But if you knew there were 2 items in it, you could do like shopping cart 0, which is the first element. But then I'm dealing with a new array that has 3 elements, price, ID, name. So if I want the price, I would just do 0 again. And then plus shopping cart second item, but still the first element in that second item, which is still the price. So this, if we had 2 items, this would work. But like if we have 3, now it's not working. If we have 0, that's going to break. And then if we have 1, it's also going to break. So it's a very brittle way to get the current. Like if you have, this is a bad way to get the price of your shopping cart. So if you were doing this, you might be like, okay, well, let me just see what methods are on the array. Or if you knew how to do looping, you could do looping. But it's, there might be a useful method for us. It's gonna be kind of advanced soon. All right, I'm gonna show you the answer, but like, just don't be that mad about it. Just don't. Just, you'll learn what you need to be able to, like, you'll learn what you'll need by the end of this module to be able to understand it. But this is probably the method I would use normally. So yeah, I'll just do it and you can see it, but, anyway, so const total cart price will be the shopping cart, and then I'm calling a method called reduce. And then, I'm going to do some stuff that won't make any sense. Yeah, so just. So I add that, and check out. Okay. So here's the log from the way I did it that I said was kind of hacky. That wouldn't work if we didn't have two items in the shopping cart. So 105 is the right total price. But then I'm getting not a number because I messed up this like the way I said to do it. That's you're not going to understand. So I'm getting not a number because I'm doing something wrong. Like I'm trying to add two things like that aren't numbers. So it's saying not a number. Which is like if you like try to add, well, this would work, but if you like try to like divide a number by a string, that's an example where it would give you not a number. That's what this means here, an and, not a number. That's sort of like an error, but it's more like an undefined or a null kind of type. Usually don't want that. So anyways, I did something wrong, so I got to figure out what I did wrong. My accumulator doesn't need an index.
Yeah, P zero. It just should be P, the zeros, those, you know, those.
Oh, because this is the accumulator and then this is the index. Gotcha. Yeah, so the very advanced example right here. You're probably like, what the hell is like B and C? But these are actually, these are just variable names that I made up. Like these could be, like what you'd see in normal scenario, be like total current. So like reduce is just a method, and then it takes two parameters. One, this is actually a function, but this is like a shorter syntax for a writing function. This function says add together the total and then the current price of the element that you're on. I'm not even gonna explain it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You'll learn about it later. But anyways, yeah, all we're trying to do here though is add together the prices. And because of the tools that we've learned currently, we had to model it in kind of a funky way, which is like an array, like a shopping cart is an array of arrays, and that you often won't model data that way. But that's how we're doing it. And then until you learn looping, it's hard to do stuff where like you're dealing with a dynamic number of things. So looping is there to handle cases where I don't know how many items are going to be in the shopping cart, or like anything like that. And so looping says, okay, like you can run code like based off of how many things are in the shopping cart. So with the loop, we can say, hey, just loop the number of times that there is something in the shopping cart, so the length of the shopping cart, and then you can like add during the loop. So you can say like start at 0, and then just for each loop, so for each item in the shopping cart, add the price of that item to the total. And then I'm gonna log the total once that is done. So that's like, once you learn looping, that'll be probably the way I'd recommend doing something like that. And then this reduce thing is a more advanced way to do it that you'll learn about later on. Okay. Yeah, so any questions about anything except for the reduce thing? Okay, all right, so I have the instructions for the bonus project. For anybody that wants to join in on the challenge, here's all the instructions for it. I kind of just did a lot of it. So that, yeah, you should have some of the tools you need to get started on it. But yeah, here's all the instructions for it. And yeah, if you want to give it a shot, please submit your stuff to me before class begins next Saturday. And if you need help on how to like share it with me, I can help you with that.
We love the group pages.
Yeah, I'll do that now. You guys want to see some cool command line stuff? So yeah, this just like updated the GitHub. Like that's what I did. It was like push all the stuff I just did to GitHub. And so you can see like I just, like on GitHub, it's like 15 seconds ago, Zach just like pushed to GitHub. And then you can see, if you click on what's called the commit, you can like see the actual stuff that we did today in class specifically. So like here's like all the green means I added stuff and red means I removed it. And so everything here is green because I just added stuff to the repo. So here's everything we did. Doesn't look like that much. But I bet it felt like a lot. So yeah, yeah, that stuff is up. And yeah, please do the challenge if you're up for it. All right, that's everything. How's everybody online?
Doing good.
Good. Very good. Okay. Are the peeps online pumped about the extra project?
Yeah, I am. I think it'll be fun.
Cool. All right. All right. I'll see everybody Wednesday. Have a good rest of your weekend.